Hey YouTube, welcome back to Big Wendy's Barbecue Channel. And today we're going to tackle what most people consider the king ding-a-ling of the smoker meats, full packer brisket. I'm going to walk through step by step, narrate it for you, sped up a few things that you're not going to really need to watch for hours on end. I'll just speak to them. And if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. And with that being said, let's get into this brisket. Alright, so let's get into this thing. First, I'm going to do, make sure you put some gloves on. Nobody wants your nasty, filthy hands all over their food. I know you got nasty, filthy hands. I do too. Been out working on the car all day or whatever, cleaning the grill. So, once you do that, we're ready to go. Make sure you got your beverage of choice, some good company, and we're going to get to trimming this brisket. So I sped this up for you guys because you don't need to see all this in slow motion. Basically what you're going to want to do when you're trimming a brisket is you want all the hard fat off. So you're going to know this. I mean, if you've never trimmed a brisket or felt a brisket, you'll know it when you feel it. There's going to be several chunks of deep, really thick, hard fat, and you want to get all that out, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a big glob of fat, because it's not going to render down. And you'll see as we get through this how much fat comes out of this little pocket here. It's pretty significant. Other than that, you want to just make sure that you're getting rid of your silver skin. And again, if you don't know what that is, you'll see it and you'll know what I'm talking about when you start trimming a brisket. It's little pieces of skin that's on top of the meat. I mean, it won't kill you or anything, but I just like to get rid of it because I just like to get rid of it. I think it's kind of like a membrane on the back of a rack of ribs. Your spices won't penetrate as well if it's on there. So anyway, I'm just gonna trim up any spots here where there's a lot of fat. And you've got two sides of your whole packer brisket. There's two muscles. You have the flat and you have the point. And the flat's going to be obviously the flatter end, and the point's going to be the thicker end. And your point is where you're going to get a lot of fat. There's a fat membrane, I guess you would say, that runs down between the muscles connecting them. And you'll see that when we get the brisket out and cut it all up. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm just trimming a little extra here and there, and this is on the non-fat cap side of the brisket. And when we flip it over, this is going to be your fat cap side. This is where all the fat layer is. And before we go on any further, what I'm showing you there is it's just a little brownish type meat. I just like to square that off. It kind of looks wrinkly. It's from packing. It won't kill you either, but I just like to make it a little prettier. So on the fat cap side, what you want to do is get the fat cap to about a 1/4 inch thick, because you want some fat on this brisket. You don't want just all lean, no fat on the brisket. You're kind of defeating the purpose of all that good flavor. So what I'm doing is just trimming down the thicker parts of this fat cap. And I'm going to leave a lot of the fat cap on here. I like that to render down, and I also like it to protect my meat. There's an ongoing debate that, has destroyed civilizations. Do you cook your brisket fat side down or fat side up? And the truth of the matter is, it depends on your smoker. My smoker, the heat comes directly from the bottom in the middle, so I'm going to cook mine fat side down. That's because I want that fat to render, and I want it to protect my meat. I don't want my meat getting all burned up, directly over that heat. So I like to leave a little fat cap on there. You're also going to have another little chunk of hard fat on the edge there that I'm going to peel out here in just a second. You want to get rid of that. Same as on the front of the brisket. That big, thick, deep meat. or deep fat, excuse me. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a little flap there between the two muscles where you can get your rub in there and really get some good flavor in there. If not, then you would just be left with, you know, that big fat glob, you know, that didn't take any seasoning. And even if it did, then you're not going to eat it because it's nothing but fat. And I'll show you, it was trimmed out there. That's about all I'm going to do on the trim. Let's talk about seasoning it. So use a binder, don't use a binder, doesn't matter. You can use a binder if you want. You don't have to use a binder. You can use whatever you want. Mustard, Worcestershire, olive oil, whatever. You're not really going to taste that flavor once the brisket's been smoked. So I like to use Worcestershire just because I like the smell of it. And for this rub here, this is my own rub. You guys can use whatever rub you want. There's a lot of good ones on the market. There's a lot of recipes on the internet. I say experiment. I like my own because I've made a lot of barbecue over the years, and I've just experimented, and this is the flavor I like. You know, I'm the one investing all the hours in here, so when I eat this, I want it to be good for me. I want other people to like it too, but you know, in reality, I want to eat good. You know, I'm spending all the time. So here I'm just, you know, putting a little binder on, and I'm seasoning it up. I like to get a pretty good layer of seasoning, which is another debate. You know, don't put a lot on there, put a lot on there, only put salt and pepper on there. You can do what you want. It's barbecue. I like to juice mine up pretty good with rub. Another thing is injections. I don't inject my briskets. Yeah, it's pretty common if you have like a choice brisket to inject it for a little more tenderization and flavor, but I don't see the need. So I'm gonna let this brisket sit in the fridge overnight, wrapped up, and then I'm gonna put this baby on. And remember, we're going fat side down, and a little bit of the rub got rubbed off here, so I did come back and sprinkle just a little bit more rub on there. And I've got this baby running at 195, and I'm gonna leave it on there for 8 hours, not touching it. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been running at 195. It's about 160 internal. And you'll see, this is where a lot of people get scared because it looks kind of crusty like a tree. Well, that's that bark. Don't worry, you'll see when we unwrap it, all that juice will be back. So this is what I want it to look like. So I pull it off, and you're just going to want to wrap it up in some butcher paper. I go both lengthwise and from side to side. And I just wrap it in there pretty tight because you want that paper to protect your bark. I don't use aluminum foil because I feel like aluminum foil, what it tends to do is steam your outside of your meat, and you're going to lose a lot of that bark, and I don't like that. So I use butcher paper. A lot of other people use butcher paper. You can do what you want, though. It's your barbecue. It's my recommendation. Go back on the pit for another 8 hours until internal temp's about 202. And then you take it off, rest it in the cooler for 2 hours. And then this is what we get. This is the money shot. You remember that brisket was looking like a tree earlier. You know, once you wrap it and cook it up to temp, like I say, about 202, 203, then rest it in an ice chest for about 2 hours. All those juices, go back in that meat, and it gets good. So you'll see the final product here after my helpers move my paper out for me. And there we go. And that does not look like a tree to me. That looks like delicious, juicy brisket. So when you're cutting a brisket, you always want to cut against the grain, and your grain of the meat is going to go two separate ways. Your flat grain is going to go one direction, and your point grain is going to go another direction. So make sure you're always cutting against the grain. As a general rule of thumb, if you lay the brisket out like I have it, you can start straight on the flat, parallel to the point where it connects, and you're going to be against the grain. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm actually explaining this to a couple of people that are sitting around the table while I'm doing this. My wife's throwing gloves at me because she knows my hands are dirty. Alright, let's get into this bad boy. So I always cut that little point off. I'm going to make burnt ends out of that, as well as some of the point. Camera work is not the best, but that baby looks good. And then I'm just going to start slicing on the flat. You want your slices about the size of a pencil. If you did it right, about the size of a pencil, the slices should come out nice and smooth. They shouldn't rip, but they should still be tender. I'm sure you've seen other videos on the internet. You test your tenderness of your brisket, and I'll do that here in just a minute when I get some more slices. You want to make sure that your brisket will fold over on itself, and it doesn't break. If it breaks, that's no bueno. You also want to make sure that you can just pull it slightly and it will break. And I'll demonstrate those here in just a second as we get a couple more slices here. Got friends pacing around, waiting to taste that goodness. Dog's coming to check it out. She wants some of that goodness. Alright, it's about time we need to check out the tenderness of this guy. See how he came out. You can see it just flops over my hand, flops over the knife. It's got some elasticity in it. It's not breaking. Nice smoke ring, juicy. Just a little bit of a pull to get that baby apart. And I gotta hand out some samples here. If you was around, I'd give you a sample. Gotta have a little sample for myself. Put all this effort in it. Come on. We're just going to get a few more of these slices from the flat side. We're getting down into the point pretty close. You start seeing the two different muscles on the pieces of brisket. And this is what you want to do, is once you get to that point, you want to turn the brisket 90 degrees, and I'll show you in just a second. Give you this money shot. I'm not going to squeeze it because the juice will go everywhere and it won't go in my mouth, and I'm not okay with that. So we turn the brisket 90 degrees once we hit the point, and we're just going to start slicing the same way. I like to go from side to side, not from the middle. Some people will cut it in half. I just like to go from side to side. These pieces are going to be a little bit thicker. There's a little more fat content in these. They fall apart a little easier. So a little bit thicker on the point side. One thing I did forget to mention about smoking it is once I wrap it and put it back on the smoker, I ramp the temp up to 250. So make sure you ramp your temp up. You're looking at about a 16-hour cook. If you go 195 for 8 hours, wrap it, crank it to 250, and then you just want to check for internal temp at that point, and feel for tenderness. When you put your probe in the meat, it should be nice and like going through butter. So I'm just squaring this up because I'm going to use this stuff for burn ends and a little bit of chopped. We got some fatty slices, we got some lean slices. People need a little bit of chopped for sandwiches. So I'm going to separate these two pieces here. That's going to be used for burn ends. And your burn ends, you want them about 1 inch by 1 inch cubes. I'll show you that here in just a second. I'm also explaining that part to some of the spectators here. Nice, slip it out of my hand, got juice all over my fingers. We'll set that baby aside there. That's going to become a burn end, or multiple burn ends. I'm going to start shredding this a little bit for the people that like the chopped brisket for sandwiches. I like it all. I like the lean slices. I like the fat slices. I like the chopped. If you want to go crazy, put you some chopped, a fat slice, and a lean slice on a sandwich. Do what you want. It's your life. Another little chop sample given away there. Not gonna have no brisket left. I keep giving away samples. Alright, we're gonna start working on those burn ends. Let's say just about 1 inch by 1 inch cubes. Doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't rocket science, it's barbecue. Man, I can hardly control myself at this point. I want some of these burn ends right now. And man, when they were done, they were good. Burn ends are your brisket candy. If you've never had a good burn end, you are missing out. And I highly recommend that you use some of your point to make some burn ends like I'm showing you here. Alright, so we got our brisket all chopped up. It's time to make these burn ends. What you're going to do with these burn ends is you're just going to put them in a pan, hit them with a little rub, just to get them coated. Want to make sure they get coated on all sides with a little bit of rub. I know that's not ground cumin, it's just a bottle I used to put my rub in. Then once you've got your rub all over the ends. Just gonna hit it with a little barbecue sauce. I prefer a Sweet Baby Ray's, sweet and spicy. I'm just gonna mix them up. And what you're gonna do is throw them on that pit for about an hour, that 250. Just let them get caramelized. And I apologize. I was hungry, I was tired. It's after a 16-hour cook. I did not get video of the burn-ins done, but trust me, they were delicious, and so was the rest of the brisket. So that's how you do the burn-ins. Just get them all separated in there, get them on that pit. And that's it for burn-ins. Delicious morsels of meaty goodness. So there you go. That's how I did this full packer brisket on the Pit Boss 1100 pellet grill. Came out amazing. Big fans from the family and friends. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, do all that good stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, you know, whatever you're supposed to do on all that stuff. Anyway, leave your comments below, leave your questions below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep on smoking.